All right, welcome. This is the Allsmith Growth Show, where we're going to explore the dark arts of marketing by diving into weird marketing tests and concepts and share our findings, insights, and secrets for growing your business. So I'm Blake. I'm an exited startup founder and I'm the owner of Allsmith Growth, which is a performance marketing agency for startups. And joined with me is Alex Bowman.
I actually, when I read this, I thought it said exiled startup founder. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess I am
It's not
too.
bad.
But I realized now it says exited. So I guess I was not an exited startup founder. So I'm just going to keep exiled. And I work with Blake on Allsmith Growth.
Nice. Really cool. All right. So today's episode is, I think, going to be super fun. Everybody's talking about ChatGPT. So hot right now. Everybody's talking about it. And I feel like a lot of people are talking about, is it going to be replacing certain jobs? You know, what is the future going to hold? And I feel like you and I started talking about it. We're like, well, wouldn't it be interesting to see, can it today replace any jobs? And so specifically, we run a performance marketing agency and we have designers and copywriters. You know, we have like the creative area, we have media buyers, and we have entrepreneurs. And so given that, we're like, hey, what would it look like to potentially go head to head of our designers and creatives versus AI, and let's actually do it. And we actually can get an answer to that by looking at return on ad spend. And so this is one of those interesting use cases where this is not a futuristic question. This is actually a here and now question. And so I'm really excited to jump into it. But maybe before we get into it, have you been kind of doing a lot of research on the AI stuff? Any thoughts on that stuff, Alex?
I have been, and I think there's been some really interesting use cases of AI recently after I think ChatGPT especially got a lot of hype and a lot of people really jumped into that to figure out exactly what they could do with it. I think a positive is there was this popular Twitch channel that it was just like an AI generated Seinfeld. Did you see this?
I did. I watched Seinfeld bombing. It was like,
yeah. But like, and most of the time you did. But sometimes it was really funny. And it was, you're just watching it and you're just like, it had numerous, I mean, it literally was on 24/7. So it would just be a completely new, fresh scene every like couple minutes where there would be like a different set of characters and a different situation and a conversation that occurred based on that. And it was just interesting because they had the ability to sort of start fresh over and over again. And you could see, a majority of the time, it's not coming out with good quality content. But when it does, it's actually, it works really well. And I think that's what's ultimately different here is like when you look at AI and how it might impact our ability to do certain jobs today, it's not going to necessarily, I don't think, pending the discovery that you did, I don't think it's going to take over anyone's jobs today. But when you use it as an assistive tool, it offers, I mean, it can definitely benefit you. It's just someone is going to have to be there to get through all the muck and find the good stuff. And that you can't rely on AI to do that. One more example, and then we move on. I actually think this is the best example. So the singer, the Decemberists, actually like asked ChatGPT to write a Decemberist song. And then he asked not just the lyrics, but also like the chords and everything. And then he actually recorded it. And I'll tell you, it sounds like a Decemberist song, but it sounds like a very bad Decemberist song. Like it just sounds very blah.
Like derivative or something.
Yes. And I think that is another really good example. It's like where you look at something like AI, it's not going to create like a wow campaign. It's not going to knock your socks off, but it has the ability to at least like jump the line in some of the work that you're doing. It's not going to completely take over someone's jobs today.
Yes. Well, I'm going to hold some of my conclusions about AI until after the conversation, I think. But did you read the article in the Wall Street Journal this weekend from Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and the head of MIT? I can't remember his name.
No.
Talking about, oh my gosh, it's all talking about essentially what are the societal pitfalls that are potentially being presented with AI. And there were a lot of great points, but one of the best points was the problem is not that AI is smart. The problem is that AI is dumb, but we don't know where.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there's no real transparency as to how it's done. And so because of that, we're very tempted, I think, to kind of give over our judgment to this deity, when in reality, we should not do that yet. And probably ever, in my opinion, right? But we need to keep up our filter of like, is that good? Is this not good? And kind of use our judgment as we interact with it, as opposed to just kind of assent to it. And then they talk about, which is really spooky, that eventually AI will be so good in its recommendations that people in mass will be tempted to kind of give over their free will to it. and say like, hey, the goal is to optimize for my happiness. What should I do today? Right. Or like that's a very small example, but essentially they're saying this is like a new religion, right? Because in many ways, religion is like tying on to some sort of future goal, and then saying, great, I'm going to just do what it says. And in some ways, suspending your judgment, right, to some extent.
Right.
And so they're saying that this is what's scary about this is that it's a religion that's not tied to any foundational principles. And it's ever evolving, and people may in mass over time, and millions or billions of people may suddenly be kind of obeying. And there's something to that that's very, very dangerous for the human species.
It is scary, not because
Yeah.
of what AI can actually do, but what I think people perceive AI could do.
Yes. Are you using like ChatGPT currently in your workflow at all?
No, not at all.
No? Okay.
No.
I'm using it a lot. I'm using it a lot for writing first drafts of things. We had to put together an online fundraiser for a family friend over the past 2 weeks. And I literally just wrote out the bullets and I said to ChatGPT, can you write a paragraph on here that's going to go on a fundraising site to optimize donations? I said, what are the top 10 things that you need to do to optimize donations? And it listed them out. I said, great, now apply it to this paragraph, please. And then I said, okay, now remove this. And so I kind of like kept playing with it until it came to something I liked. I mean, I use it all the time for that type of stuff. And in that
That's
instance,
awesome.
like, hey, I'm using this for good, right? I'm raising money for a family. I was like, that's a good thing.
It just goes to show that it's assistive. Like the
Yes.
technology can be used in a way that completely simplifies and improves the things that you work on. But it seems like it's quite far at this point from being able to take over someone's job completely.
Well, let's see about that,
Yeah,
Alex.
exactly.
All right, let's jump into it. That's a great segue
Thank
into
you.
our test. So what I want to do is we're going to play 3 rounds of robot versus humans.
Okay.
The first is going to be copy. The next is going to be creative, like images. And then third is going to be performance, which is you're going to try to predict which ad in combination performed the best. So, all right, I'm going to talk you through the process. First off, we used one of our clients at Allsmith Growth who used InsureGrid. We wanted to use a real client with a real business with real signups that we were already running meta ads for. And we said, great, let's actually try to do a new ad campaign for them. So I texted Chase, the CEO of InsureGrid. I said, hey, I want to do this cool AI versus humans design test. So are you in? He's like, yes. I'm like, cool. Give me a prompt for an ad campaign that you've been wanting to run. And so he essentially gave me this prompt. It was a little bit of text that I can kind of share in here even visually. So he gave me some text describing the ad campaign he wanted to do. So great. So I took that. First, I handed it over to 2 different designers. I wanted to use 2 designers because I thought, hey, if it's head to head, it might just be that we had one designer was stronger than the other. If the robot could beat 2 designers, then I thought it'd be more conclusive. So I took it to 2 different designers. I said, hey, can you please write an ad campaign for this business, insuregrid.com, and can you create a meta ad with an image, some subtext, as well as a call to action? And they said yes. And so they started going off. All right, so now here's my process with AI. So first I went to ChatGPT and I said, please create a meta campaign with image descriptions. I want you to describe an image that for a meta ad and write the copy using this prompt. And then additionally, I said, here's some additional context. And I pasted in all the copy from the homepage of insuregrid.com.
Oh.
I said, and so that it could use that copy, it kind of understand what it was, right? I pasted all of that in. And out of it came descriptions of images, as well as some copy that kind of came out of that. I then took the ChatGPT description of the images, and then I pasted that into Midjourney. So it's essentially an AI that creates visual images only through Discord currently. So you have to use a Discord channel, and then from there it kind of creates 4 different permutations of ads. But then in the end, we ended up needing to do just one. So then again, I used my human selection to choose one of those 4. It was creating some kind of creepy looking images initially. And so I ended up adding things like young and attractive to
Interesting.
to the people, because I thought it was looking kind of bizarre looking, or looked like it just didn't fit the model. I knew from the brand style guides that they're looking for a kind of a cutting edge young insurance agent for them to target as their customer. I wanted to be as hands off as possible, but I got carried away a little bit. And so it's worth calling out the bias. This is not a scientific test. Okay, so then we took that one ad and we did a 50-50 head-to-head test with one of the designers, and then we took that same ad and did a 50-50 head-to-head test with the other designer. And so then that's how we kind of got our total results.
Got it. The only difference was ad copy and ad imagery.
That's correct. Got it? Here we go. Robots versus humans. Are you ready to play
I'm ready.
the game?
I'm ready.
Round one, ad copy. And so we have three options of advertising copy coming from describing InsureGrid. And you're supposed to identify two of these are from human beings. One of them is from ChatGPT. All right. Option one, from saving time to closing more deals, find out all the reasons insurance agents across the country are using InsureGrid.
Okay.
That's option one. Option two, InsureGrid is your hub for verifying insurance policy data and documents professionally and efficiently eliminating the hassle of back and forth emails and calls. Okay. Then option three, InsureGrid is a secret weapon of successful insurance agents. Get ahead of your competition by streamlining your insurance verification process, closing deals faster, and making more money. Try it now and never go back. Here's the game. You have to identify which one is the robot.
I don't tell me what it is. I'm going to explain first. I think it's option one because option one I think is the weakest of the three. Okay. However, I also think it's option three because if you fed in their landing page as additional context, it does seem like a good summarization of a landing page. So that I don't think it's option two.
I wanted to hear, I want to split out which do you think is the robot and also which do you think is strongest? I'm kind of curious.
I think from an ad perspective, option three is too long.
Okay.
But so I would say it's probably,
I would say just to be clear for any audience members, Alex has not seen any of this stuff. And so you're actually reacting live to all this. So great.
And only one is a robot, correct?
Only one is a robot. That's correct.
I'm going to go three, option three.
Option three is the robot is your prediction.
Option three is the robot.
And you think option one or two is the strongest?
I think one or two would be best as an ad.
All right. The answer is option three is the robot. You got it. Nice job.
Yeah.
Well done.
See, but here's the thing. I don't think if I had no experience using ChatGPT and if I didn't know how you use ChatGPT, what you just described to me, I don't think I would have picked option three. Because option three, I think, is a good summarization of InsureGrid compared to option one or two, which feels to me more like ad copy. Yeah.
Okay. Great. All right. You ready for round two? Let's do some imagery. All right. All right. Round two, imagery. We have, I decided to go A, B, and C.
This is going to be great if anyone's listening to this as a podcast.
I know everybody can go to it. We have a blog post that's going to go with it. So we can link to the blog post in the description. And so that way they can look at the summary on that as well. All right. Option A, we have a woman sitting at a laptop computer and it says, get left behind or get ahead with the solution. Option B is a screenshot of a phone. This is a scrolling type and it says more than just insurance software. And then option C is a man with a blue background kind of dancing. And it says what it feels like to save time and close more deals with InsureGrid.
There's something a little off about option C's glasses to me. And I can't tell if that's the quality of the graphic or like in Zoom, like degrading it in some way. But I know that that's a common trait with AI is that it's not great at drawing faces. Option A has a very clear face on it. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's not from a robot. So then it's between option B, which is this phone image and already placed on a carousel, a Facebook carousel, and option C, which is a man who has something going on with the eyes that I can't quite figure out. I'm gonna say option C is the robot, just because of the eyes thing.
Got it. Okay, great. The answer is, drum roll, option A is the robot.
Option A?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Midjourney's way better than DALL-E.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
You and I have played with DALL-E before, but yeah, this is using Midjourney. Yeah, and
I mean, it is pretty ambiguous. Get left behind or get ahead with the solution.
Yes, right.
I mean, that was a little sus to me, but at the same time, I just completely disregarded it because it was like it looks like an ad.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, all right. So we deceived you with the images. Interesting.
Right, so I'm 1-0 right now. I mean, I just immediately disqualified option A because of Blake and I did not a trial run, but we were playing around with DALL-E before just see if we could even feasibly do something like this. And DALL-E was just completely incapable of generating human faces. Yeah. So I didn't realize that Midjourney was so capable in that sense. And I just dismissed it because of that.
The final test.
All right.
Round 3, which one performed. So here's the ad with the copy. Which one was able to generate the most accounts for our customer? Roman numeral 1. I want to vary it up a little bit. So option Roman numeral 1 is robot. Option Roman numeral 2 is a designer, and option 3 is also designer.
Got it. Yeah. And for those of you that are listening to this potentially, then it's because I'm seeing the exact same copy and image on the screen right now. It's just all encapsulated into an ad. The question is, which one performed the best?
Yeah, which one created the most customers? We spent $500 per ad.
Huh. Okay, so looking at option 1, it is the longest of the ad copy, as I mentioned before. It's a good summarization of what's on the landing page, but it's very long. And the image is by far the most generic. Option B is a carousel placement, which is different than the other two. And it does a good job summarizing what the ad is in the copy, or what the product is in the copy. Makes me yearn for more. Option 3 is even shorter. Same feedback. It makes me yearn for more. It's interesting. It whets my palate. And the ad is actually very colorful and interesting. Like, to me, it like very much draws the eye. It does not look generic. I'm going to go with option 3 being the one that was most performance, like getting us the best bang for our buck, because it's got a very eye popping ad, and it has the shortest ad copy. And so basically, like, I think this ad is going to be the one that does the best at capturing people's attention when they're scrolling. That's my guess. So I think option 3 is the best. I think option 2 is probably second best, and option 1's the worst, just because it's harder to skim and it doesn't catch your eye when you're scrolling.
All right. You ready?
Yes.
Drum roll.
What?
All right. Let me walk you through this. All right. The overall winner barely is option 1, the robot imagery and copy. So it's almost tied.
It
with
is
option
barely.
2.
Yeah.
Yes. And right, this is probably not statistically significant based on the amount of traffic that we're looking at. However, it's at least tied with option 2 and is actually significantly better, like 50%
option 3
better
did not do that
than
well.
option 3, which was your pick. Isn't that crazy? Now, to
That
be
is
fair,
crazy.
the way we do these ad tests in general, like you and I, when we're actually doing this, is we would have thrown all 3 of these in and had them compete to win. And we've actually been distrusting our own judgment like this for a long time, right? This is exactly why we do lots of different permutations of ad copy, is for this exact reason, that humans aren't great at predicting these types of things. What I thought was really interesting was cost per click was actually fairly close to each other for the most part. And so it's like, okay, all of them did a decent job of getting people to look for more. But I think what was interesting was the increase in conversion of option 1 and 2, which I think the main reason for that, so for the AI and for the carousel, is that both of those gave more information up front, which means once somebody clicked, they were more qualified than option 3, because option 3, they might have been interested, but they weren't going to be as qualified kind of coming into it. Pretty fascinating. I do think that my one tip to ChatGPT may have tilted this a little bit by saying young female, because I know that young female ads for this business have worked well in the past, because a lot of these are young men who are going to stop and scroll because of that. That's stereotypical, but also supported by data. Also, I think seeing an older African-American man, I think for the inverted reason, may actually have made that ad perform less, which I think actually brings up some of the issue that we've seen with AI, which is that there is a lack of representation a lot of times in ads. And I think our designer who did this ad was doing the right thing and like saying like, hey, we want to see some diversity and some representation in these ads. But ChatGPT is like, screw that. I'm going to do what works. And it's just like, it's almost like a reversion to the 1950s Mad Men approach, which is like, hey, whatever it takes to sell more product, you know?
Right.
Pretty crazy though, right? Like
that is
crazy.
Like,
yeah. I mean, this is like,
I mean, do we just like get rid of our marketing people and creative people and just start running with this?
Right. I mean, that kind of becomes the question, right? And so I think that that's the discussion, which is, okay, what do we do with this? And so my personal belief is that maybe somewhere in the future, there is a world where AI is going to replace designers or creatives entirely. I don't think we're at that era yet. I do think that creatives that embrace AI are going to annihilate creatives who don't. I think that's the stage that we're in the same way that when's the last time that you had a contractor come to your house and use a hand screwdriver instead of using a power screwdriver, right? I would say it's in tool stage, not robot stage. So we don't have full autonomous robots coming in and doing the housework. But we do have power tools now. And if you're smart as a creative or media buyer or as a growth lead, like I think that 100% we need to start embracing AI, because in this instance, at least tied it. Oh, that's the other thing. I didn't have to pay the AI to do this. Well, I did. I paid $20 a month for ChatGPT.
Okay.
And $20 a month for, but I mean, compared to, call it somewhere between 100 and 750 for those two designs that I had to pay them hourly to do it, to get effectively the same mathematical results. It's like, holy cow, like that's a really big difference. So
what about your time? Like, how much time did you invest in the AI side? How many hours did you invest getting the results that you got from the various tools that you used on the AI side versus the prompts that you gave the designers?
It was about an hour. And I actually did
an hour
a screen
for
recording to this whole process of getting the copy and getting the imagery. It was
from
about
the
an
AI.
hour. From the AI.
From the AI. And then how much, what was it on the designer side?
Zero. I just pasted in the prompt from
Got it. Okay. So basically, like, you have to, the additional cost here is not just the services from the AI, but also the additional time investment that it takes from you to actually make sure that you're steering the AI in such a way that you're going to get usable results.
That's correct.
So the thing I think is interesting here is that, you invested a certain amount of time in building the prompt and getting the actual thing that you wanted out of the AI, whereas the designer sort of just went off and did that thing on their own without a lot of interaction. The ability for either you to do that as a non-designer and get the results that you wanted back, that I think is interesting. And I think to your point, it is even more interesting for someone who is in a role like a design role to use that as something to accelerate their process. As a means to what you did earlier with ChatGPT, just to even get ideas for the designs. That alone could have been big. What would have happened if you got those design ideas from ChatGPT and the designer went off with those instead? They may have had a better version of what ultimately won. It is extremely interesting when you think about it as a tool to accelerate the ability to do a thing. And when you think about it too, by the way, we didn't even mention the fact that, like, when you're running these ads on Meta, an AI has been actually putting those ads in front of people this whole time.
Right. We've been augmenting our media buyers with AI since day one.
We've long been, for decades, talking about the ability of, like, robots to make our lives easier so that we can spend more time enjoying life. If you look at AI as a means to, like, instead of having to sit there and ideate all these different things that you could run as an ad, if ChatGPT or Midjourney can take that off your plate and you still come out with the exact same results, I mean, that's a huge win. That makes you more efficient. Therefore, you can deliver high quality work and then go start another company or, do more work or
like quintuple your client load is a lot of it, right?
Exactly.
And I think it really, this is a promotion for any sort of creative specifically. I think it's a promotion to creative director. I do think that it's like, we need to be actively, for us with Allsmith Growth, I want to put a flag in the ground and say, we want to be actively encouraging folks to be using this. From my standpoint, I see the opportunity for us to serve way more people, way more cheaply, in a way that is actually better for the lives of all the people doing the work. Because a lot of that work was going into, Google Sheets and categorizing one thing or another in order to get one chart. Now that can be done in an instant. I think this is a major win. And I think that the people, the agencies, the startups that embrace this are going to annihilate the companies that don't.
I completely agree with you. And I think circling back to what we talked about when I was doing my non-marketing related AI banter, it is interesting to see how those things are applied in the conversation we just had around actual, like, marketing usage of AI, and that you see that human intervention is still required in a lot of cases where you continually steer something or you pick winners. And you see that, or at least like I did when I was looking at the ads, both the copy and the imagery that ultimately won, but was created by an AI, it did feel very heartless and bland compared to the other two ads, which I thought actually had a little bit more creativity and a little bit more, I don't know, like pop associated with them. But I guess ultimately that doesn't really matter, because if you do it over and over again, eventually, like, it'll win. I mean, even if you think about the context of, what would we do with this? We would run more ads, right?
Yeah.
So if that ad was bland, maybe the next iteration wasn't. Like, maybe it just keeps building upon itself, iterating to the point that we end up coming up with something that's just as good as
Yeah.
what designer made. I don't know, but
I will say this was the pool we jumped into is the performance marketing pool, right? And specifically, this is a lot of the games in performance marketing air towards short-term games,
yes,
right? And so
yes,
it's like, great, how much money can we make this week? As
yes,
opposed to branding,
yeah.
right? If you're trying to make a Coca-Cola,
Yeah, make a
Coca-Cola,
30-second Coca-Cola Super Bowl ad.
right. And that's a far more sophisticated and
Yeah.
more artistic endeavor. And so I think that in some ways, this is maybe, I don't know if this is a bad thing or whatever. I think that we've been treating creatives and performance marketing like robots for a long time, right? And then it's an assembly line and then they deliver it to us. And right, we measure the success of our creatives based on speed and
Yeah.
based on communication, not based on necessarily ad quality,
Yeah.
because we let the robots decide. And so I think that this specific creative endeavor actually airs towards automation
Yeah.
far better than other creative endeavors like
Right.
songwriting. This is why I want to embrace this thing, is that it's here. And I think that it's going to reveal where a lot of people have been hiding, that there is maybe the work was not as complex as we thought it was. Or maybe people were padding time or trying to charge hourly or things like that. I really think that this is going to reveal the true work, which is, I think, experience.
And at what point do they become sentient and try and take over the world?
Yeah, yeah. I'm more fearful after reading that Wall Street Journal article, which I'll link to. I'm more fearful of not taking over, but of humans giving over
Right.
their autonomy. I think that that's the more likely, because I've even felt that in myself, where, I mean, we all do it to Google to some extent of like, what do what kind of new car should I buy? Right. Sometimes we write these like kind of like prayer like questions into Google, where it's like, what's the right way to raise a family? Or like you like ask these kind of generic things and you get a
I
blog
prefer
post.
to think that you're praying, what kind of car should I buy?
Yes, right. Well, I mean, yeah, but I think that there's like, we start asking these questions and then kind of going with the results. And I
Yeah.
think that AI personalizes it so much more, where now it just gives you the answer in a
Right.
bulleted format, that I think that the temptation to suspend our judgment it's here. And I
Yeah.
think that it's really important as humans that we actually hold that back, both for like the impact of, like we said, representation and diversity, but also a good life is one of making choices. And I think that
Right.
we have to use our judgment.
I think also though, AI does a really good job of filling in gaps. And you mentioned this earlier, but we don't understand why it makes the decisions that it makes.
Yes.
So oftentimes it will say things that aren't necessarily true and make decisions that aren't necessarily the right decisions, but it'll portray them in such a way that they're extremely believable to us.
Yes.
Therefore, it's a slippery slope. Like we may be taking its advice, or taking its advice and doing something that is ultimately the wrong thing to do, but only because we believe it and we have no way of understanding why I made that decision.
Yes. Yeah. Have you ever read Wendell Berry's "Why I Will Never Own a Computer" essay from the early 90s? Yes. So Wendell Berry's, poet, philosopher, novelist in Kentucky, who's been kind of, I'd say, mislabeled as a Luddite. But he essentially says, hey, here's my writing process. When I write, I like to write by hand because it's slow and it makes me think well. And then I hand that to my wife, and then she talks out loud with me and types out her edits and types up a new format. And so he goes, so for me, I could get a word processor, but it would eliminate the improvements in my writing and the connection I have with my wife when we go through this process. And so he goes, for me, although it's a technological efficiency increase, it is actually a lifestyle and quality decrease because I lose the connection. So he goes, his format is not that computers are evil, but just whenever we're embracing new technology, we should be asking the question, what will this replace? And if it's something that's more valuable to you, you should not embrace that technology. And I've thought about that for years. Of even every time I download an app, I have to ask the question, what is this going to replace in my life? And is that a good thing? Right. And I think that in this instance that we need to do that on each use case of AI, not AI as a whole. Cool. All right. We probably should land the plane on this. Any closing thoughts or anything like that? Or you feel good?
I feel good.
Cool. All right, cool. Ways that folks can stay connected with this. They can subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify. They also can just go to allsmith.org and you can get kind of a monthly show notes and kind of written form summary of all of this, as well as kind of links to different points in the video. Yeah, go for it.
And we want to know, how are you using AI today, and what other tests would you like us to do? We want to do more episodes of this, and if there's something else you'd like us to run, some of the crazy dark arts tests that you'd like us to run in the marketing space, let us know. We'll probably run it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the vision for this is that as we grow this thing, the ideas could get wilder and more aggressive, because essentially we can be the R&D department for a lot of startups that maybe don't have the budget to, in this instance that we spent $500 per ad, a lot of people don't have the budget to kind of test that type of thing. I want to be kind of on the front edge of trying new experiments. So if people have experiments they wish they could see, send them in to us for real. Like we would love, comment, and we would love to kind of start being that R&D department for a lot of
not just with
startups.
AI, with anything.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And then stay tuned for. Okay.
You could ask ChatGPT what crazy
that's a great
ideas they have.
I'm definitely going to do that. All right. And then stay tuned. We're going to try to get another one of these out in the next month. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you soon.